what I want to leave our listeners with today is a bit of a reflection on the present moment. On the one hand, the questions we are discussing are universal and will be available on Scala's YouTube channel for people long into the future, I hope. But right now, we're doing this on Zoom because we're unable to meet in person because of the COVID crisis, the coronavirus. And in these times, I wanted to ask kind of what is the value of this kind of liberal education when one feels like one is living in a crisis that is almost akin to a national, really an international health crisis. What is the value of a liberal education in this moment?
This crisis, as crises often do, has brought into greater focus our own humanity, the frailty of our humanity, the fragility of our humanity, the defining feature of our life, which is our mortality, the centrality of bonds and human connection in our sense of self. We are right now, as we record this, in a period of social isolation. Right, many states have mandated self-quarantines, stay-at-home orders, social distancing. These things, we are feeling the profound impact that they're having on the way that we experience the world, and our craving, our need for community and for human contact. These are the great human questions, and our education ought to be our liberal education. That is that portion of the education that is not just about earning money, but about our own humanity. That education ought to be focused on these very same questions. Many of us have found solace in this time of crisis in returning to some of those books. I've been rereading Boccaccio's Decameron and the experience of the plague and the kind of burst of humanity and humanism that the Black Death in Europe occasions, and which Boccaccio explores with those just exuberant, funny, full of life and full of flesh stories of the Decameron. We are finding solace in community. Since we have been in pseudo quarantine, probably the most satisfying 2 hours of my time have been the 2 hours I spent on Thursday with my students, talking on Zoom, but talking about our own experiences and trying to come to terms with what was happening and what it meant for us to be studying great books at this time and in this moment. So I think that this human crisis brings into relief the very values and questions that our liberal arts education is concerned with. And those of us who have access to a liberal education, I think, find ourselves with an extra set of tools that we wouldn't have to deal with this situation had we not had that liberal education.
That's a wonderful answer. I will just direct people to Scala's website, where I have posted an article, a blog I wrote recently on C.S. Lewis's, it was actually a series, an oration he gave at St. Mary of the Virgin in Oxford in 1939, just after England had entered the Second World War. And the essay was called On Learning in Wartime. And I reread that essay to help me get through this time of crisis, being cut off from my community and my schedule upended. And Lewis makes several points, but one of the points he makes is that even in wartime or even in times of crisis, we don't cease being fully human. So what I have thought about this crisis is that it would be silly to think that anybody's schedule is going to go on as it always has, and just everything we were doing before we're now doing on Zoom and ignore what's going on. No. We have to pay attention to the crisis. We have to be informed. But we're still human beings. And Lewis makes this point that if we don't feed our minds with good literature and good ideas, we will be deformed. And so I think part of what's happening, because there's so much social media and so much news, I want to encourage people to take some of this time of self-isolation for actual solitude with great books and not just absorb ourselves in the 24/7 news cycle, because it would be very tempting to do that. So, and I think what Lewis's point is that the life of the mind requires fighting distractions. And in a time of crisis, you have to really practice fighting those distractions. So just as an example, I got together the Scala alumni from the 3 past summer seminars. We did a Zoom call last week, and we talked about Lewis's essay. We talked about how we're doing. And we're launching a reading group on Zoom on Dante's Divine Comedy, something yours truly has never read. And when I got really tired of screen time, I sat down this weekend with Dante and a notebook. And for the first time in a long time, it was like being a freshman in college when I didn't have a laptop. It was me and a book and a pad of paper. But in some ways, I was deeply in solitude. But in that deep solitude with my great book and my notebook, it dawned on me, I'm having a great conversation with Dante, because in some ways, this object he created called the Divine Comedy is an expression of the man, the actual historical man named Dante. And it's a set of ideas and concepts. But the point being, like, even in our solitude, we can have these great conversations with the great books. People who are imprisoned can have great conversations with great books and great authors. People who are not in a 4-year college, people who got a 4-year college degree and didn't get a liberal education. The great books are things you can pick up. Now, I long for community, and I'm searching for a community to better understand Dante, but I want to encourage anybody out there who has not had the benefits of a formal great books education and tell them that you can do this. You can all do this. You might need a guide, you might need a reading guide, you might need a community, but find out what's being taught in the great books and pick one up right now and let that enrich your mind and deepen your soul. And then when you are responding to the crisis in whatever way, I think you'll see that you're responding to the crisis from a deeper place of understanding our own humanity, as you said. That's
right. That I could not agree more. Let's give some thought, not just to what's happened the last 24 hours, but the last 24 centuries.
Well, on that note, I am so grateful for your time this morning, and I would love to continue this conversation. I feel like it's only just begun, and we'll find another time to do this again. But again, I want to thank our audience for listening. I want to encourage people to look up your articles. You have a wonderful article in Inside Higher Ed on the importance of liberal arts education for everybody. You've published in the Chronicle of Higher Ed. I've written on the Scala blog and on Margarita Mooney about education. I have an article in Real Clear Policy. So let's keep this conversation going. Thank you so much for your time today, Roosevelt.
Pleasure to talk to you, Margarita.
Bye-bye.
Bye.